You feel tired, but not the kind of tired that sleep can fix. It's a weight in your chest, a silence inside your thoughts, a dull ache that has no clear name. And the most dangerous part? You've started to call it normal. But what if I told you this isn't just burnout? It's not stress. It's not even depression in the way you've been taught to understand it. It's erosion, slow, quiet erosion of your identity. You're surrounded by behaviors that chip away at your core, not with violence or drama, but with routine. Small things, the way someone speaks to you, the way you silence yourself, the way you laugh at jokes that aren't funny because it's easier than being difficult. Carl Jung called this the danger of the unconscious, what we refuse to face in ourselves, we project or tolerate in others. And what we normalize becomes us. If you like this type of content, like and subscribe to the channel. That's the trap. Most people imagine danger as loud, abuse, betrayal, chaos. But the deadliest threats are subtle. Passive aggression, sarcastic comments, silent treatments, micro decisions that tell your nervous system, you don't matter. These behaviors are termites. They don't knock down your house in one blow. They eat the foundation while you're sleeping. And you wake up one day, not broken, but hollow. You'll tell yourself you're strong, that you're just tired, that it's just life. But deep down, something in you knows. You're swallowing poison. And the worst part? You think it's love. Jung warned us. What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. Keep resisting the truth, and it'll only get louder. So I'll ask you now, and I want you to sit with it. What have you been calling normal that's actually destroying you? It always starts gently. A suggestion, a soft tone, a sentence that sounds like love. I'm just saying this because I care. If you really loved me, you'd understand. You're too sensitive. I didn't mean it like that. And so, manipulation enters not as a storm, but as a warm breeze. You don't notice it at first, because we're trained to associate love with sacrifice, concern with control, and emotional discomfort with our own flaws. So you begin to adjust, to please, to prove yourself. But here's the truth. Jung spent a lifetime trying to drag out of the dark. When someone tries to mold you in the name of love, that's not love. That's fear wearing perfume. These people aren't always evil. Often, they're broken, carrying shame and fragility they've never faced. And instead of healing, they reach for control, because shaping someone else is easier than confronting your own chaos. But you're the one paying the price. Every time you comply just to keep peace, you pay with a piece of yourself. Every time you shrink so they don't explode, you reinforce their illusion of power. And the worst part, you start doubting your own compass. Jung called this the shadow game, where the parts of us we repress become tools of projection. And when those projections land on someone close, they become puppets in a drama that was never theirs. You're not crazy. You're not too much. You're a person caught in a game you never agreed to play. So ask yourself this and don't flinch. Is their care making you grow or making you smaller? Because control often wears the mask of concern. And the longer you let it sit, the harder it is to breathe. It comes with a laugh. That's what makes it so easy to miss. The comment, the jab, the little, you know I'm joking moment. But deep down, you feel it. Not as laughter, but as a sting. Mockery is one of the most socially accepted forms of violence. Because when it's dressed as humor, you're not allowed to protest. If you flinch, you're too sensitive. If you call it out, you're ruining the vibe. So you do what most people do. You smile, you nod, you laugh, and a part of you dies. Carl Jung warned us that the unconscious doesn't distinguish between play and reality. When something is repeated, even as a joke, it imprints. And the worst part? Mockery often comes from the people closest to us, friends, family, partners. They'll say things like, "Oh, it's just a joke, lighten up." But jokes aren't neutral. They reveal what's hiding behind the mask. People don't tease you repeatedly for your insecurities by accident. They do it because, on some level, it makes them feel bigger. And why? Because many of them are drowning in their own shadow. Jung spoke about this, how people unconsciously lash out to avoid facing their inner emptiness. So instead of healing, they humiliate. And you become their punchline. Until one day, you look around and realize you're always the one getting laughed at. Never with, always at. Let this land hard. Anything that needs to humiliate you to entertain others is not a joke, it's an attack. You don't need to tolerate it. You don't need to be the cool one who can take it. Because every time you laugh at your own wound, you help them drive the knife in deeper. At first, you're sure. You remember exactly what was said, how it made you feel. You even remember the look on their face. But when you bring it up, they shake their head, smile faintly. That never happened. You're overthinking again. God, you're so dramatic. And suddenly, you're not so sure anymore. Gaslighting isn't always dramatic. It's not screaming or slamming doors. It's a slow drip of doubt, one sentence at a time, until your reality begins to blur. And that blur becomes your prison. Jung described this as psychic betrayal, when the mind, in order to survive emotional chaos, begins to betray itself. You edit your memory. You question your feelings. You apologize for things that hurt you. And the manipulator? They don't need to control you with force. They just need to make you mistrust your own eyes. Because once you stop believing yourself, you'll believe anything they say. This is the dark genius of gaslighting. It doesn't silence you. It makes you silence yourself. You begin to say things like, maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it's just me. I'm probably just being too emotional. You're not emotional. You're being emotionally dismantled. And the longer it goes on, the harder it is to tell what's real. You lose your voice. You lose your anchor. And eventually, you lose yourself. Jung warned that the parts of us we exile don't disappear. They fester. And when you exile your own intuition, your own memory, your own sense of truth, you rot from the inside out. Let me tell you the truth, most people never will. If someone constantly makes you question your own perception, they're not confused, they're strategic. And if you keep playing along soon, the question won't be, what happened? It'll be, who am I really? You speak your truth, and it's met with a sigh. You try to explain what's hurting you, and they roll their eyes. You're always so dramatic. You need to toughen up. Why do you always have to make everything a big deal? And just like that, your emotions are no longer valid. Not because they aren't real, but because they're inconvenient. This is emotional invalidation, and it's lethal. Not all at once, not loudly, but over time. Every time you're dismissed, minimized, or mocked, you learn to doubt what you feel. You start filtering yourself. You stop crying. You stop expressing. You stop being. Carl Jung wrote, "What is not brought to consciousness comes back as fate." What you repress doesn't disappear. It mutates. It turns into anxiety, insomnia, explosive anger, depression with no name. Because the human psyche isn't designed to swallow itself. And when someone repeatedly teaches you that your emotions are too much, you become less to survive. Less expressive, less open, less honest, less you. And here's the trap. You begin to think it's strength. You call it being mature. You call it keeping the peace. But what it really is mutilation. Jung believed that repressing emotion was a form of soul loss, a gradual detachment from your inner self. You become a hollow version of who you could have been, palatable, safe, invisible. But let me ask you something uncomfortable. What's the cost of peace if it requires war inside you? Because if you have to silence yourself just to stay close to someone, you're not in a relationship. You're in emotional exile. There's a moment, subtle, quiet, when you stop fighting. You no longer explain. You no longer express. You just exist. Moving through life like background noise in your own story. You've stopped defending your boundaries, not because you no longer care, but because you've convinced yourself they were never worth defending. This is the final stage, not explosive, not dramatic, just numb. Carl Jung called this psychic death, the moment when the self no longer believes it has a right to exist as it truly is. When the mind has bent so many times for others that it finally snaps. Not out loud, but inward. You begin to tolerate the intolerable, not out of strength, but out of fear. Fear of being alone, fear of being too much, fear of never being loved again if you dare to ask for more. So you settle, you shrink, you stay in places that reject you because rejection feels safer than emptiness. You start saying things like, "It's not that bad. I've dealt with worse. I just don't want to cause trouble." But deep down, you're drowning. Because when you live in constant self-betrayal, your soul starts to whisper, "This isn't who we are." And if you ignore that voice long enough, it stops whispering. That's when the real danger begins. Not when you're in pain, but when you stop noticing it. When your tolerance for disrespect becomes your identity. When you trade authenticity for acceptance. But hear this now, and let it cut through the fog. Belonging that requires self-erasure isn't belonging. It's abandonment dressed in comfort. You're not here to be tolerated. You're here to be whole, to reclaim the parts of you that have been exiled piece by piece in the name of being easy to love. And that starts when you stop calling survival a life. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe to the channel.